I started this YouTube channel exactly 1 year ago in December of 2021. Now, the original idea behind the channel was to be a mix of topics, which includes everything from gear reviews to albums that are in my collection to even records that I bought along the way. Now, back in 2021, it didn't make any sense for me to post a best of 2021 list because I only had 3 subscribers in that first month, thanks to you 3 OGs out there. And really, who cared, right? But now that I'm a year in and I've been buying music all throughout 2022, I thought it'd be interesting to go through and tell you about my favorite releases that came out this year. Now, what was interesting for me was going through the physical media that I bought. I actually bought a lot of music on a variety of formats, where in years past it was mostly just records. This year I bought records, CDs, and even cassettes. So I think it's gonna be kind of interesting to go through and look at which albums I bought on which formats and talk about if that's gonna be the same thing that extends into 2023, mixing up formats. Also, if you stick around through the end of the video, I am gonna talk a little bit about an idea I have for my mailing list, where I'm gonna be offering records for sale from my collection going into next year. So I want you to be able to sign up there and be the first people to be able to get a shot at buying those. So if that sounds interesting, let's jump into my first 3 favorite records from this year next. Subscribers to my channel will know I have a very eclectic taste in music. It's really all over the place. As long as I find an album interesting, it doesn't matter what genre it's in, I'm probably gonna buy it and listen to it a lot. Now, these first 3 albums I wanna show you right here, I've actually already made a video about all 3 of these that came out earlier this year, probably like June or July. These came out early in 2022, so I did a video halfway through the year. I'm gonna put a link in the description below so you can go back and watch that video and where I explain these in more detail. But for now, I'm just gonna kind of quickly go through them and tell you just a little bit about each. The first is Ghosted by Oren Mbarchi, Johan Berthling, and Andreas Verlaine. Now, the reason why I love this album is, I guess you could classify it as a jazz album. It's instrumental, but the songs on this, there's only 4 songs. They're all very spaced out. It's a great like Zen record. This is what I would put on. This is actually what I put on when I really need to like focus, and especially if I'm working, like it's great background music. Definitely check it out. The second album is from International Anthem, the record label, and it is Panama 77 from Daniel Villarreal, and I don't know if that's glare or not. I apologize if so. I'm gonna read this this description here because I think it's perfect. Floral array of percussive psychedelic funk blossoms foraged from an abundant garden of communal instrumentals. There's a lot of great people that play on this record, including Jeff Parker, which you're gonna hear a lot about today. Spoiler alert. This album is actually also a colored release. And I think it's like a gold color. I think they call it Polaroid gold or something along those lines. If you're a drummer and you're looking for a great instrumental album, definitely check this one out. Now, album number 3, we're gonna switch gears. We're gonna kind of get out of the jazz world and go into just big, chunky rock jams. And that is Drug Church's Hygiene. I saw Drug Church years ago at a festival. I just happened to walk onto a smaller stage. I had never heard of this band. I saw them perform and absolutely fell in love with them. At that time, their current album is called Hit Your Head. This album, they have continued to progress, but their sound has gotten bigger and chunkier. And if you like punk rock mixed with just good old-fashioned rock and roll with really big, like chunky guitar riffs, definitely check out Drug Church. This album actually also came out with a really great sort of splattered color release there. At least the version I bought did. And I've really enjoyed listening to this album throughout the year. Let's look at some of the CDs that I bought this year. I already made a video about that this CD was included in, where we went to Asheville, North Carolina, and I went to Harvest Records and bought a bunch of CDs, which was kind of weird. Instead of records, I just didn't find any records they had that day, so I picked up some newer releases, and one of those was Angel Olsen's Big Time. Now, as I mentioned in this video, when this album came out, it was marketed as the bigger the bangs, the bigger the twang. It's definitely twangier for Angel, who's known more for some of her indie rock albums of the past, but it's not quite twangy enough for me, who's lives in Nashville and is thinking of Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton type twang. But I still really enjoy this album. It just has sort of like an alternative country, independent, laid-back feel to it. It's very California country. I believe it was produced by Jonathan Wilson. Lots of reverb, lots of great songs. If you're into that sort of vibe, definitely check out Angel's album here. Next, this one absolutely flew under the radar for me, and I saw somebody post it and was like, oh man, I have to buy that immediately. And that is Mavis Staples and Levon Helm's Carry Me Home. Now, this album was recorded in 2011, but released in 2022. It was a part of one of Levon Helm's Midnight Ramble shows. Rambler? I forget. Midnight Ramble, I think. Anyway, if you love the band and Levon Helm, and if you love the Staples Singers and Mavis Staples, this is a no-brainer. It's a great sounding live recording. It's great to play when I'm testing out gear. All the songs are wonderful, but you gotta hang in there for the last song, which is Mavis and Levon singing the classic band song, The Wait. If you love either of these, definitely check this out. Okay, so I also bought an album on cassette this year, which I love buying cassettes from like albums that I loved growing up, which is more like alternative, grungy stuff. So whenever I find, I don't know, like a Nirvana or Pearl Jam tape or something like that, I'll always pick it up. But I also started supporting newer acts on Bandcamp when they would release new albums. And sometimes there's a lot of new stuff coming out, and I'm excited about it, but I can't afford to buy every single release on an LP as they're trending closer to $25, $30 each. So sometimes I want to support, I'll buy a cassette copy instead. And this is from the Nashville artist Soccer Mommy. This is the new album, Sometimes Forever. And I almost dropped it there. It's kind of on a cool pink cassette, which is another reason why I wanted to buy it. But another great sort of lo-fi indie rock record to me. Some people would argue maybe it doesn't sound that lo-fi, but a lot of great songs on this one. Definitely check it out if you like female-fronted independent rock. Okay, we're moving. I know these videos can get a little long. Speaking of an album that moves, if you're a fan of Discord Records, you gotta buy Hammered Hole's new album, Careening. Produced by Ian MacKaye, his brothers on vocals, Mary Timony's on bass. This album is just a great post-punk record. Reminds me of like a mix of Fugazi meets Minor Threat, like with Minutemen and Farrakhan mixed up. If you're a fan of DC indie rock, you gotta check this album out. Now, we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about an album that I always mispronounce the artist's name. That is from Kokoroko. I think I got that right. I always have to double check. Kokoroko, Kokoroko. The reason why I always mess that up is because I oftentimes say Korokoko or something. Kokoroko. Now, I found out about this album via Giles Peterson's BB6 radio show, which makes sense because he released it on his label, Brownswood Recordings. It's a great jazz album with a mix of like just instrumental performances, but also great vocal performances, like female-fronted vocal performances. We Give Thanks is a great song on here. The album is called Could We Be More? If you like jazz mixed with Caribbean influences, definitely check this out. I was excited to buy this limited edition because the vinyl is actually it's white only. And my copy actually came with this little special sleeve here. It's not a sleeve, and I'm totally spacing what to call it, but it's limited edition white vinyl. Out of 500, I got 479. So a great jazz vocal record that you should definitely check out. Just let me gush a little bit longer about Jeff Parker because I love him, and he's a great jazz guitarist that was most known for his work in sort of the 90s and 2000s with his band Tortoise. I own all the Tortoise records, so anytime Jeff releases something new, I definitely check it out. I saw him live last year, almost a year ago. It was in December 2021. He played at Third Man Records opening for Steve Gunn, which is great. First time I ever got to see Jeff. I never got to see Tortoise. But enough about me talking about Jeff Parker, because this is actually his first live album. This is called Mondays at the Infield Tennis Academy. If I understand this correctly, I think this was just a lot of live performances, about 10 hours worth, that they culled down into 4 songs. Now, each song is about 20 minutes long, which is why I opted for the double CD version rather than the double LP. But that to each his own when it comes to how you want to get Jeff on formats. But this actually has more of a full band, which is a little bit different than some of his previous albums where he's recorded a lot of the music himself. But on this album is Jay Bellarose. It's either Jay Bellarose or Bellarose, I'm not sure, on drums and percussion, Anna Butters on bass, and Josh Johnson on alto saxophone and pedals. Josh does a great job. The whole band's great. Josh does a great job playing saxophone on this album as well. So if you're into Jeff Parker and you missed this release, definitely pick this one up. Let me talk about 3 more jazz records that I really enjoyed this year. The first one may have gone under the radar for you, and that is from a band called Black Flower. Now, this album is called Magma, and Black Flower is actually from Belgium. So I had to order this album for an international release, which is always fun waiting for those to arrive. Found these guys on Bandcamp. I actually first heard about them on Ted Gioia's Honest Broker newsletter. This band is highly inspired by a lot of international vibes. So it's mixing Afrobeat with great sounding drums and even a dash of that dub sound. So think of Fela Kuti meeting dub. That's kind of weird, but I call this jazz. It's definitely modern jazz, definitely pushing the envelope. Sometimes it gets a little into an electronic vibe, but look up Black Flower on Bandcamp. I promise you'll really enjoy this album. Now, another international release that I picked up was from a band called L'Orage, I believe, L'Orage or L'Orage. This is called Triangle. Now, these guys are actually from Geneva, Switzerland, and this has a great mix of traditional jazz, but also with some future forward rhythms that'll kind of just keep you grooving. I really love a band that I'm going to talk about later called Surprise Chef. If you like Surprise Chef, you should definitely also check these guys out. Again, this was another Bandcamp discovery for me, just kind of going through jazz releases, and was definitely worth having it shipped all the way from Switzerland. Now, let's keep talking jazz, okay? All right. One of my favorite series is Jazz is Dead. Now, this is from Adrian Young and Ali Shahid Muhammad from Tribe Called Quest fame. And I have bought every Jazz is Dead release that has come out. Now, this is number 14, and this features the bass player Henry Franklin. Now, the great thing about the Jazz is Dead series is a lot of times they mix great classic jazz performers, bring them in the studio and put a band with them and record everything. And Henry's a great sideman that's played for many, many years. So if you like jazz, bass-oriented jazz records, definitely check this one out. But the thing I really love is Adrian and Ali have this great analog focus when it comes to recording. If you follow Adrian Young on Instagram, he's always giving free recording tips, talking about how he doesn't like to do things digitally, only recording analog straight to tape with a live band. That's what these albums sound like. Jazz is Dead is a great series. If you're going to start with any of them, why not start with this one? This is a great record by Henry, but definitely check out everything. Again, great Bandcamp page where you can find all their releases. But this one was definitely, they had 3 or 4 that came out this year. This one was my favorite for 2022. Speaking of jazz legends, one of my favorite CDs that I picked up with this year is from Brian Jackson, the legendary jazz artist, mostly known for his work with, I shouldn't say mostly known, but well known for his work with Gil Scott-Heron over the years. And he had a CD come out this year, an album really, called This Is Brian Jackson. And I jumped on this real quick because, as you can see, it's an autographed copy. So definitely wanted something signed by Brian Jackson in my collection. From what I understand, there's a producer named Daniel Collas, C-O-L-L-A-S, Collas? Sorry for all my mispronunciations here. And he got together with Brian, who had a bunch of unfinished songs that dated back years, including songs with Gil Scott-Heron. They went in and finished all those songs and put it on this. Now, there is a vinyl version available now. When it first came out, it was only on CD, which is why I ordered it on CD. And of course, I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to get that autograph. This has a wide variety of jazz sounds on it, everything from more traditional to sort of electronic type vibes. But if you like Brian Jackson and you missed this album coming out this year, definitely check this one out. We're still talking CDs, and back to sort of me buying more CDs this year. One of the reasons is it is cheaper. I'm sorry. When you're buying a lot of music and you want to support a lot of new acts, the cheaper option is sometimes the one for me, because I want to buy something from that artist, but I can't afford an LP by every single one. And a great local artist from Nashville is Rich Ruth, who released this album, I Survived, It's Over. I bought the CD copy. Now, what's interesting about Rich Ruth albums is that some of the previous ones, people just lumped it into ambient music, and I think a lot of people put this in there as well. It's instrumental music. I don't know that it's so ambient where you think that it's like, I'm gonna lay down and just sort of, vibe out. This album moves. There is like crazy guitar and horns and everything on it. And at times it kind of feels like it's about to go off the rails, and then they all bring it back and it sounds great. Definitely check this out. It came out on Third Man this year. Okay, just two more albums I want to share with you. If you've made it this far, you're a champion. Just hang in there. I want to tell you a little bit more about my mailing list and selling records idea just right after this, so stick around. But the last two albums, a classic band for me, Archers of Loaf, Reason and Decline. Of course, if they're announcing their first new album in 20 plus years, I'm gonna buy it. This album to me doesn't sound so much like the Archers of Loaf I grew up with in college. It's a little bit more laid back. It reminds me a lot more of Eric Bachman's solo project Crooked Fingers, but it still has a great Archers of Loaf vibe to it, and it's got songs like Screaming Undercover, which sounds like vintage Archers of Loaf. They're going out on tour next year. I can't wait to see them. I really hope they continue to release new albums going forward. All right, and last but not least, probably my favorite record that came out this year. I just love this band, Surprise Chef, from Melbourne, Australia. I buy all their items when it comes out. I say items because there's full-length albums, but they also release a lot of 45s that I pick up as soon as they're announced. How to describe this album? It's instrumental, jazz, I guess, but it's really more laid back, like funky jazz. Okay, I love like hip hop beat tapes. And if you were to go in the studio with a live band and try to make a hip hop beat tape, it would be Surprise Chef. This album is called Education and Recreation. It's the one I've probably listened to the most this year. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely check these guys out. I know they're Australian, but I really wish they would go out on tour this year or hit the States this year somewhere so I could get the chance to see them, because I bet it would be a really fun experience to see these guys. Great recordings, sound really great. Again, super laid back. Big fan of this album. Well, those are the releases that I really enjoyed in 2022. I thought it was an interesting mix of vinyl records and CDs and even a cassette or two. If you're a new artist that's putting out music, don't pass putting out music on CD. It's oftentimes for someone like me, I enjoy being able to buy things from you, but I may not have the ability to buy 10 new releases on a Bandcamp Friday, all at $30 each. But I could maybe buy CD versions and still be able to support an artist, but not have to spend as much on new vinyl. With vinyl prices rising, I do think there's going to be a growth in interest in CDs next year. I've seen that on my channel by reviewing CD players. Those have been some of the most popular videos. even though I named this channel Forever Analog, you guys really seem to be liking the digital side of things. And like I said, I think that's a sign for how, you know, physical media might shift a little bit more going into 2023. I'm still going to be buying a lot of vinyl records, but CDs will play an important part in that as well. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm going to start an experiment going into next year. I own a lot of records. I have a lot, and I have what we like to call space issues, where I just run out of space for new records that I'm buying. So oftentimes I'll go through my collection and pull out ones that I haven't listened to in a while and sell those. Now, I used to do that through eBay or Discogs, and it is what it is. But I really thought it'd be fun, as this channel grows, to offer the ability to sell those records directly to my viewers on this channel through an email list. So if you go down in the description below, you'll see the ability to sign up for that email list. Sign up there. Going into next year, I'm going to start trying to offer up just a handful of records every time I put out a newsletter, and that will give you the ability to buy those direct from me, which I think would be fun. To me, it's fun to sell these, you know, person to person. Like, to know that a viewer out there is able to buy a record directly from me, I think would just be a lot more fun than just boring, blindly listing it on Discogs. Don't worry, I play grade all my records, and I'm very conservative when I grade them. So I think you'll be happy when you buy direct from me as well. Anyway, sign up for that list below. Now, all this to say that I know I was talking about CDs earlier, but I still really do love buying vinyl records. And people always ask me, like, why do you still buy vinyls? Is it because it sounds better? And I honestly think that that's a really lazy answer, just to say vinyl sounds better. And I made a whole video about this, about the reasons why I buy vinyl other than just the way it sounds. So if you'd be interested in watching that video, you can do so by watching that here.